Hey, Tatooine Sons family, this is David. Today's episode is a bit of a detour from the normal back and forth that you're used to on the show. Today, BB Nate is actually interviewing Brandon Proctor. Now, you may not recognize Brandon's name, but you certainly will recognize his work. Brandon is best known for his amazing sound editing on films like Creed and Thor, Love and Thunder and A Quiet Place, and of course, Wakanda Forever and Black Panther, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Achievement in Sound Mixing. If you're a regular listener of this show, you already know that Nate's dream is to follow in the footsteps of men and women like Brandon. They spoke a few weeks ago about Brandon's success and more. Thank you for listening to today's special episode. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to it.
It's a huge honor to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
But let's jump straight into the first question. And it's obvious that you've had quite the busy year in 2022, from the unbearable weight of massive talent to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And so having such a busy schedule, how do you avoid burnout from all these projects?
That is a good question, especially because some of them will have lots of hours, overtime, weekends. Sometimes it's not lost that, when you work on some Marvel movies, that there's always a lot of hours clocked. And so you want to have some time in between. But it's literally just trying to have as much time as I can carve away. And luckily, they are, there are breaks in between. Sometimes it's like, because I'm freelance, so it'll be like, oh, I've got a week off or 2 weeks off, or, and so It's not always that way. So when I do have that, it's just, maximize that time with really my family,
Yes, it's important stuff for sure. So that's, I was looking at how many things you did in 2022, and it was just like, okay, I saw that. It's crazy. You did so many things in the span of 1 year. It's insane how much you actually work, for sure. But out of all the projects in 2022 that you worked on, what would you say was the most fun project you had, and why?
That is actually a really good question. I will say I have a lot of fun in my job. And part of the fun is that, from job to job, I get to work with different crews, different people, different projects. There's different, problems to solve. But, it's easy for me to probably just go to Wakanda Forever.
Okay.
Just because of the people involved, but, working with Ryan Coogler is such, I love working with him and for him and collaborating with him. And he is so, he is such a collaborator when it comes to, what everybody does on his films. He's really, really great with, he's got a definite direction. He knows exactly what he wants, and that's not an issue at all. But at the same time, he always lets people bring something to his films. And if it's something new, he sits with it for a moment. He'll okay, it's new. I don't want to say no or yes or anything. I want to sit with it and kind of see where it takes me. Or he'll go okay, that's great. Go further, push it harder, see what else more, screw it up, see how far we can go before we break it,
Wow. All right.
And, I love that collaborative spirit. But the music in his films are so fun to work with, and that's probably the one that's standing out. Of course, it's the most recent as well. But I had a lot of fun on Thor. Was a lot of fun in the crew. Those two projects were like longer projects for me. So
I bet, yeah.
Yeah. And Thor had more hours. So I think that was a little bit, at times you're just like, you're getting a little tired at the end,
but those hours were pretty long.
Yeah. And it was just coming back together with the same people that I worked with on Black Panther back in 2018. It just had a kind of a homecoming spirit to it as well.
Yeah, that was great. The mix of Wakanda Forever was fantastic, and it was just an overall great movie. It was great to be back in theaters for a Marvel movie that was this important and impactful. So that was awesome. And Black Panther has always been impactful and huge in the space of even critics. And you have been personally nominated for an Oscar before for the amazing sound mix on the original Black Panther in 2018. So kind of give me, what was the vibe of being at the Oscars like? Was that kind of a surreal experience? Were you able to make it even?
Absolutely. No, it was surreal because, you get nominated and you're kind of like, there's so many good soundtracks and so many projects, that always be kind of like the perfect, zeitgeist of it all. The having the film, the job you did, the people you work with, and it was surreal. And, I watched the Oscars as a kid with my parents, my mom. And so just kind of like, it was always a thing that was in our family. My mom raised me on films and watching lots of old movies and all the way through, you name it. Like she's a big Star Wars fan and Star Trek fan and stuff.
Smart.
So she's like all over. It's either like an old black and white or it's like, and so now she's like, like getting my older kid, well, he's 4, into Star Wars.
Perfect timing.
Exactly. And he's in love with it, of course. But it's so surreal to go to the Oscars and be there and you go like, this is so weird to be a part of that world where it's something that I used to just watch on TV,
Right.
It's pretty bizarre. It's fun. And, everybody, it's also like, there's such a thing where there's a luncheon. So when everybody gets nominated for an Oscar, then they have like this luncheon where all the nominees go. And it's kind of like a little like pre-celebratory thing. You've been nominated. So everybody goes as nominees to that. And everybody is just on this like playing field of like, it's very congratulatory. There's like a picture. You can look for these pictures.
That's awesome. Every
year there's a luncheon and a picture of everybody that's nominated. And it's such a like actors and directors and, they kind of put different people at different tables and everybody's kind of intermingled together. And it's such this like, the film industry just kind of, it feels like a little camp thing real quick, like a real little fun thing that everybody gets to do when they're nominated and everybody's on the same playing field. It's pretty great.
Yeah. It's kind of like the community coming together for one common love of movies and,
Totally.
no one person's really bigger than the other. You're kind of just all there for film, which is an awesome experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, it really is.
Sounds amazing. And you were speaking yourself, you've worked with Ryan Coogler several times before, first on Creed, which fantastic movie. And of course the Black Panther movies, which are great as well. And so what would you say his style is like? You keep coming back to work with him. So what is his version?
He has a point of view on everything. He's thinking about every aspect of the film. Not that directors aren't, but he's thinking about like the record, that's going to come out along with the movie. And is there a soundtrack that people are going to want to involve? The musicians that are involved. Like on Creed, he had rappers that were from Philadelphia that were on the album. You know what I mean? Like specifically taking people from the regions and area, or it's Black Panther, rappers from like say Nigeria or other different, musicians from, all over the world, but really connected to the project, so it's really, he thinks about it in such a way. And I love just the connective tissue of all of that, and his point of view and how he wants to try to push things. And he's such a, he's very passionate, and he cares so much about, you can see it like in Wakanda Forever, that movie, he had to rewrite after he lost a friend, and you can see it in the movie. It's not just like, let's make a movie. He puts himself on every project. And Creed, he remember watching Rocky 2 film, the movie Rocky 2 with his dad when his dad was sick in the hospital and losing his strength and so forth. So he puts all those, his personal life, no matter how big the film is, into the movie he's working on. And I don't know, I'm really attached to that. And anything he does, I just want to be a part of, because, he's such a good person and filmmaker.
Yeah. He always seems to just put so much passion behind every project, no matter what it is. He's always there to make sure that it's the best film that he can make it. And every time he does it, you can just tell there's a lot of emotion behind it. And he makes sure that people feel that same emotion that he felt when he was making that film. And it's amazing. And it's what keeps me from keep watching his films too, because I can feel that emotion. I saw Wakanda Forever 3 times in theaters just because I was so amazed by how well done it was. And it's a great movie. Everything he does is fantastic. But you were talking about how he kind of puts his influence into the films and even into the sound mixing. And he kind of, whenever somebody sees something new, he takes a little bit of time to consider it. So in what ways does overall a director involve themselves in the sound editing and mixing process?
They're all a little different. Sometimes, when a director builds a team or has worked with a team for a long time, he can get really used to like, okay, you guys do your thing. And I just want to like review it and then give notes and so forth. Sometimes when there's more complicated things, they get involved really early on. There could be anything with, languages or specific design elements, and they need to be involved for all those elements. Ryan is one of those people that we have a shorthand with, but he he wants to check in once a week. And is there anything you want to ask me or anything you want to show me? Anything so he's connected that way with every department. But then some directors are just, they don't want you to do anything unless they're there with it, and it's not because they don't trust you. It's just, they want to be a part of every aspect, or they already have thought about it and they already know what they want. So they don't want you to waste your time. And then some directors, I like, with like John Krasinski, I have like a shorthand where we learned that I could do a bunch of stuff because I already kind of have an idea what he wants, but then he'll come in with fresh ears and he hasn't heard all the like noodling and the things I'm trying that maybe I don't even like. And then he can have that fresh set of ears and go like, yes, I love that. I don't, and he's got amazing ears, and then he'll like, okay, I'm going to sit right with you. And then like literally like just is like, that right there. Okay. What's that one set, and then he'll get in the weeds in a good way. It's super fun, for me, for somebody who they're not changing their mind for the wrong reasons. They might go like, oh, now that we've done this, maybe we could change this other sound or element to bring us closer to the story that we're trying to sell.
And you just mentioned A Quiet Place, and so you worked on both of those films. What's it like editing sound on a movie that's kind of built all around the lack of it, and kind of making sure there is a lot of quiet moments? And how did you work around that?
It's kind of liberating in a way, but also it's a huge task of like, how quiet can we be? Are we, is the audience, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, how far can we take these quiet moments? Are we boring the audience? Are they actually thinking to themselves about, oh, this is really quiet in this moment? As soon as the audience says that to themselves, you've kind of lost them. So you need to keep them, pulled into the film and the project and what's happening on screen. So it's, we on those films, we tried a lot of, sometimes we'd be like, oh, how quiet can we be and how long can we be quiet for? And you'd have to watch it like in a long play, the full project, to get kind of an idea, like, is this working? Is it too far? Are we going to lose the viewer on this? Or when do you come back with the sound? So those moments were very calculated, but at the same time, we tried going further at times. You're like, okay, it's too far. the audience member is going to go like, what did it break? Did the theater break? Did the speakers just shut down?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be concerned about anytime you lose somebody in a story, and they start thinking about what you do, you kind of lose that aspect, that you really need to have them glued into the film. And sometimes you can make a sound or whatever, and you're like, it's an amazing sound and it works so cool. But sometimes it's too good, or sometimes it's too interesting. You have to know when to weave it in and actually not like have the audience go like, that was a really cool sound. At that point, you've kind of lost the story,
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, that did happen to us, the whole, is the speaker broken in The Last Jedi when Holdo explodes the Star Destroyer and all the sound just cuts out. We were all looking at each other wondering, okay, well, that this theater has to repair their speakers now, because we thought they just broke because there was no sound. And eventually it came back. And so that was a moment where we were thinking, okay, what happened to the sound and where are we now? And so it's interesting you kind of don't want people to think about the sound. That's something I think about all the time, but that's just because I love to think about sound. But the normal movie goer shouldn't have to think about it. That's really awesome to kind of work around. And I know it's kind of like picking a favorite child. It's very difficult to do, but what would you say your all-time favorite project you've worked on is, and why is that?
That is, sometimes I'm asked that, and I always cop out and give a couple examples, but, cause I could even go back to like Finding Neverland, which was like, a long time, but not only working on that film, I had so many, I made so many friends from that film and so many connections. So I know it's kind of like, it's like a friend-based thing, but it also is that I love the movie and it was a big moment for my career as far as like we're getting to work on a bigger project that I loved so much. But I it's kind of like that film. Borat had a huge impact to my career, but also my life at the same time. So I connect things a lot to my life, I guess, that way. But also it was just such a different experience for me on that film, and so fun and ridiculous. And then it probably goes to like A Quiet Place and Black Panther. And I will say there's connections to all those that have to do with like friends and relationships, but also how enriching it was to, then I think I like All Is Lost, that film back in 2014, about Robert Redford's boat, where there's like 3 lines of dialogue or something, and it's just hit a boat and that's it. I mean, all these projects, they're, I know I just counted like 5 kids, 5, but they all have, something to them that either they had a big impact in my life personally, as far as, the people I know, the people I worked with, the people I met because of those people, I mean, like Finding Neverland, if I didn't work on that movie, I may not have met my wife. Like there's actually connective tissues. I can look at the like friend tree and the people I've met because of other people. But also, or some best friends of mine from that film that didn't even work on that movie. They actually were friends with the people I worked with on the film. You know what I mean? Like my wife in the industry, it's just, I can actually see, because I met this person there, Matt Chessy, the picture out of Finding Neverland. I've worked with him a few times. I met one of his best friends that became one of my best friends, and, that kind of thing. But also just sonically, that movie, Borat, Finding Neverland, A Quiet Place, All Is Lost. All these films have a thing that I got to push creatively in myself and push, a different aspect in my career in sound, and really kind of do something that wasn't as normal. Quiet Place, I mean, it's in the title,
Right.
And I remember when I first was asked to do it, I was like, I have to work on. I didn't even know what the movie was yet, but it's called A Quiet Place. Like, this is, I'm investigating what's going on with this movie. What is this movie? And like, based on the title, I wanted to work on it, and it's like just the opportunity to build such a world with sound and the absence of sound. And when, every sound is so specific in why you hear it. It's not because there is a pencil on the table that you need to hear the sound of it because it was thrown. It's well, how loud is that pencil, and is it going to actually, make are you going to die because of that sound? Every sound is connected, and that was, that really is, fun, to say the least.
Yes.
I don't know. Did I break your question?
No, you didn't actually. That was great. It's always a difficult question to answer because, you have worked on so many big projects, so many different ones. And so it's really difficult to answer what's your favorite one. And so, but yeah.
And it changes too. I mean, those are always kind of in there, but like I could, I might change my mind down the road, but right now that's the answer. It's a cop out, but it's true.
Right. It's very strange to kind of always be like, all right, well, this one is actually my favorite one. You never have one favorite at a time. So you always make sure you change out what's going to be on. But speaking of favorites, let's kind of just move into some fun rapid fire fandom questions, just kind of some things you love about movies and stuff. So again, let's ask, this is also a very difficult question, but what would you say your favorite movie of all time is?
Okay. Favorite movie of all time. This does change from time to time, and I connect it to my childhood, but I'm going to probably say Empire Strikes Back right now, and it does sometimes change, but the connective, part of my childhood, and I was such a big Star Wars fan as a kid, and those were my G.I. Joes. I had figurines and Star Wars. Those were my. And now that I'm showing I just started showing Coco, my son,
of course,
the Star Wars movies, and I'm showing him in order. So I started with 4, 5, 6. Some people talk about showing them in other orders, but I also I have such a historic, side to me where I want him to have this historic feel of how other people saw them, but also that's the order they came out. The VFX are maybe a little more crude on those old ones. And I didn't want, I've heard some kids like, oh, they don't like those movies because they were raised on episode 1, 2, and 3 or whatever. And they just, old, but I just love Empire Strikes Back in that movie. I just think it's such an amazing film. I think you could argue as far as Star Wars movies, maybe Star Wars is better or Empire Strikes Back is better, whatever. But something about that film and the music, the score, and there's a darkness to it. And I just think it's such an amazing film. And now showing showing Cohen, that's probably like my favorite film I've showed him at this point, So I'm connecting to that too. But I could go in so many different directions in films. But I love Wes Anderson movies and Fincher films and, P.T. Anderson movies. These are some of my favorite directors. But it's that right now that's the film based on.
It is an amazing film. I mean, when I ask people that, I've gotten that answer a few times before, but it changed a lot of what we think of when we think of movies. I mean, there were so many different aspects to it. You think that, A New Hope revolutionized so much on the technology side and what you can do with sci-fi fantasy, but then you get to Empire Strikes Back and it just built on that and made it so much more. And so, like you said, the score, John Williams being John Williams, which is always a genius when it comes to that. And just the entire stories and the revelation at the end, there's not really a movie like it. It's difficult to think of one that was so important to pop culture even, but you've worked on, Marvel movies before. So kind of who's your favorite Marvel character?
Favorite Marvel character? That is a good question. It's funny. I think I might say Black Panther. I mean, maybe it's because I've only worked on three Marvel movies, and I love everything that's built around Black Panther and the land and where they're from and the technology and this, it has kind of a deep history that you kind of learn while you watch the film. But that, and I might also say Iron Man. Okay. Totally different thing, but Iron Man is such an amazing movie, and it's just the physicality of it, and the kind of there's almost like a real aspect to it, that you can kind of glue into it, especially in today's, where we're at and stuff.
Definitely.
But I'd probably bounce between those two.
Yeah, both of those are great characters, and Iron Man kind of started it all with the MCU, and just kind of made such an impact on what we think of as superhero movies and comic book movies now. And Jon Favreau really started something crazy for sure when he directed that. But to kind of the last question, Empire Strikes Back is your favorite movie. So who would you say your favorite Star Wars character is?
It's Darth Vader. I just,
really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just, and maybe I'm back to being a kid, but everything about who that character is. And I love when I've talked to my kid about Darth Vader. He's like, is he a bad guy? And go, he's complicated. He's kind of been a good guy and a bad guy. He's also, but I love that. I love the story of Darth Vader. That iconic pop culture, the helmet, the outfit, just the look, the sound. I mean, there were so many things, I mean, it's so funny when you look at the Darth Vader in Star Wars and Empire Strikes. He looks so much more polished in Empire, but I'm sorry, just crazy. I know, but just that look is just such this striking and amazing. And I love just the kind of the redemption story of Darth Vader and or Anakin or whatever, and just that whole, I'm not a huge fan of episode 1, but I do love that you have the little boy who's actually Darth Vader, just that aspect of it. There's just such a to see the wholesomeness all the way to how dark, I mean, it's such a, but that's it's just got to be him for me.
I am your father.
Unfortunately, you'll never be able to hear my favorite part of Nate's conversation with Brandon. And that's because the two of them spent another 10 to 15 minutes talking after the recording was turned off. They discussed schooling and how to make connections in the industry and what it takes to truly be successful as a sound editor in Hollywood. Over the past 5 years, we've set a lot of different goals for this podcast. We've had lots of ambitions, including naming an official Star Wars creature. But the most important lesson that I've learned over these 300 plus episodes is that seeing my sons have these kinds of interactions with amazing men and women like Brandon are what it's truly all about. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. Please follow the show on your favorite podcast app, and that way you won't miss a single episode. Give us a review and a rating. That's what tells those podcast apps to get Tatooine Sons in the feeds of other Star Wars and pop culture fans. So it means a lot. Follow us on socials. We are having some good times on there right now on Twitter and Facebook and things. And I know it's hard to believe good time on Twitter, but we're doing it. So make sure that you check us out on there. And then, of course, if you could please share the show with all the other nerds and geeks in your life. If they love Marvel, DC, Star Wars, or anything else, check them out. Just a reminder, we believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story. It is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we talk about Star Wars and Marvel and DC and Lord of the Rings and all of the other amazing franchises that you love so much, just like we do. We hope you'll tune in to next week's episode as we continue our conversations about the Mandalorian and some of the revelations and things that we have experienced in that, as well as recap some things that we watched over the last month in movie theaters. Can't wait to talk about that. In the meantime,
may the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.